challenges you have in installing roofline lighting is really running the wire in a way that you don't see it. And so whether you're doing it DIY, there's some things you can do, like come over the side of a gutter with a wire or something that as a professional install we do not like to do. So Brian's been looking at the home this morning and determining how can we get wire from one attic to another, fishing wire, and where to place controllers and running wire so you don't actually know that we were here when we leave.
So the thing that makes this house kind of tricky is the way the peaks are. And one in particular is we have this peak here that pops out over the front door, which is it's kind of divorced from the rest of the house. It just stands out there by itself. So normally we could possibly put a controller outside and run up the rain gutter and hide it that way, but there is just no easy way to do that because of the way the roof line is laid out. So after kind of doing some investigating and crawling up through the attic and looking around the attic, they actually have a pretty open attic. I'll probably be working between 3 different attic accesses, but there's all paths where they intersect where I can run wire through. So I think the best way to do it to conceal the wire is to run it through the attic, and I'm gonna come up. We're mounting the track underneath the eaves just below the fascia. So what I'm gonna end up doing is finding a spot kind of inconspicuous towards the end, like behind the rain gutter. I'm gonna go ahead and drill up into the bottom of the soffit, and I will stick a fish stick in to to enter the attic access, and then I will go into the house and bring my wire to that point and tape it to my fish stick and pull it through to where I need it to come out. Looking at it, we've got 4 different peaks here, and it looks between those 3 attic accesses, it looks like the best way to do that and to be able to locate one controller in one location is to go with everything through the attic. We're gonna run an X series up this first peak here. And so I'd like to be able to put my receiver someplace where you're not gonna see it. So looking at this and watching how the roof line comes into where this gutter is, I'd like to be able to kind of hide it behind the gutter so you don't necessarily see it first thing when you walk up on the property. So to determine whether I can get there or not, I'm gonna peek up in the attic right now and see if I can look down and see if you notice the bottom of the soffit is perforated, and I should be able to look down in this corner and see some daylight through those perforations, and that's how I'm gonna determine if I can get a wire to there or not. So if you look at the construction of the attic, I can tell the main A-frame that goes over the garage kind of runs up this direction. And then we have the other peak that intercepts into this. And if you look, you can tell the main garage roof line here, and we've got some access below it that should go out to the eave area that I'm trying to get to. So I'm gonna crawl over to this front corner and take a peek. So looking out in this corner, I can see that I could get into the first, at the very least, I can get into the first 24 inches of the attic. If you look down there, you can see the area that I'm referring to in the eave. So in this installation, because we're running it mostly in the attic, I've decided to go with the Haven wire, the X series wire. The color's white. It is rated for in-wall, and it is also outdoor rated. It's just not direct burial rated. But being as though we're running everything through the attic, this is a much smaller diameter than our direct burial, and it's proving to be an easier choice in this situation, being able to run through the attic like that. So what I have here is a Haven X Series receiver. This is basically the start of your X Series. Every X Series line you use, or channel is what it's called on the receiver or on the controller. So I want to find a place that I can mount this, that I can get something solid to screw it to, which looks like I got a little bit of wood back here. So I think I'm going to go ahead and probably mount it something like this. And then I'm going to figure out, once I start my channel, I'm probably going to drill a hole here for the X series wire to come up with an extension. And I'll pop that out where the X series actually starts. But then my actual X series wire where it feeds, I'm going to come in on the other end. So I'm just going to kind of set this up here to get an idea of where I'm going to drill. Because of the way that these are, I don't really want to drill down in the valley, because that's going to make if I needed to seal the hole, it's going to make it harder to do so. So I want to kind of come on the flat area. So it looks like I'm going to be about the center of this one and the center of this one on my holes. I'm going to go ahead and just drill the first hole I need first. I want to mount my receiver here. This is what I like to use when the soffit is this is an actual vinyl material. A lot of times they'll be metal. What I like to use to drill the hole with is, people call it a unibit, or maybe more commonly known as a step bit, which kind of just gives you a nice clean hole. And it's a kind of a piloted bit that you can start with a small hole and then work your way to the size you need. I don't need a huge hole because of the X series wire is maybe only 3/8 in diameter. So I'm going to kind of go up here and kind of feel around to make sure that I'm not going to hit anything solid. And I'm going to choose to go ahead and start drilling. It looks like my wire will fit through there. So we're going to go ahead and start with that. And every tool that we talk about here on our Haven channel, there will be a link in the description where you can go buy it yourself to make your job much easier. So now I'm gonna go ahead and try to angle this kind of where I need it to go. So that should be more than enough length for me to grab it. So on this house, the way that the soffits are designed, the under eave area, because of the area I told you previously with the perforations, this is designed for the attic to vent. And in this case, just drilling through the bottom of this allows us to get access directly into the attic, which is the area that we crawled up there to look at to make sure that not only we could drill up there and get our fish stick pulled, but to make sure that there was no other obstructions limiting our ability to pull the wire efficiently through the attic. So now that I've got my fish stick through to where I'm pretty confident I'll be able to grab it in the attic, I'm gonna go ahead and get my wire set up. And to do that, so I'm gonna take my wire and a roll of electrical tape, and I'm gonna go ahead and tape it to the fish stick. And a lot of times, this is where you could actually run into, if you don't have somebody on the back side to help you with this part. I also, once I tape it, and then I'm going to take the time, I'm going to tape it extra good because I don't want to crawl all the way up there and go to pull my fish stick and figure out that there's no wire there, and then I got to start over. Now that I've taped this on good, at the end, I went ahead and just folded over a little flag there so that it makes it easier to unravel once I get it up in the attic. So now that I have it taped on, a lot of times, if I were to just go up there and grab this and pull on it, the lump that I've now created by taping this to the side will limit you from, it could get hung up and it's going to take a lot longer to get up in the attic. So what I like to do at this point is just kind of start it and feed it through so that I have very little obstructions. So once again, before I go up there, I don't want to have any obstructions. So I'm going to look at how I've placed my wire, because I don't want the wire to curl up or be able to get hooked on anything. So I'm going to pull it out in the driveway like so that hopefully it's smooth sailing once I'm up there. Also, I've determined that we're going to be putting the controller someplace in this garage, but I haven't figured out exactly where I'm going to put it or how I'm going to get the wire there yet. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go ahead and go up there and I'm gonna retrieve my wire and I'm gonna pull it out to the attic access and give it plenty of length to where I can bring that wire anywhere that I might need it to go. Basically, when I do a project, I like to start with what I call the challenges or the hard part first. And in this particular house, it's getting the wire to the location. So I'm gonna concentrate on getting all my wire to the location area that I wanna put my controller. And then once I have all my wires here, then I will determine where the controller, where I have good power, where I have good Wi-Fi access, and where the controller is gonna be best suited and how to get the wire there. So because I put extra length into that wire, or into that fish stick, you can kind of see that I don't necessarily have to crawl all the way back in the area that I was before. So I'm going to go ahead and just reach across and grab that. It looks like I can bring it right here by the access. I've got it far enough over. Possibly. So there we are, have it. I'm gonna go ahead and, like I said, I'm just gonna bring it down to the attic access for now. And make sure I have plenty of length to go anywhere I might need to go. After kind of giving a quick look around to the garage to see where I have power, it looks like this wall is gonna be my best bet. I also checked overhead to make sure that I can get down this wall. It looks like once you go into this air conditioning vent soffit here, it's kind of open to the wall, so I can go ahead and, I'm gonna plan on doing it someplace in here. And then the way that I determine where I'm gonna put it is I'll just kind of pull my wire out. As a good rule of thumb, especially not knowing where exactly I want it on the wall, I make sure my wire is long enough to go down to the ground. So I'm gonna run it down to the ground here, and then I'm just gonna kind of lay it out along here to make sure that I can make it to that wall. If I decide to pull it back and go around the long way, I wanna make sure I have enough length, so I'll kind of come back like this. And then that should be long enough to get where it's gonna go. I'm gonna go ahead and pull like another 6 feet just in case that doesn't work out when I go to actually do it. It's better to have a little bit more wire than you need than to end up running out of wire and not having enough, because we don't necessarily recommend splicing this wire longer, because then you have to not only deal with the splice points, how you're going to hide them, how you're going to make them safe, but it's just current wise is going to be better if it's continuous run from controller to the receiver box. So now that I ran my wire, I'm gonna come back to my soffit where it came out, and I'm gonna go ahead and cut it at a spot. I'm just gonna kind of cut it where I can reach down here, because the beauty of being in a soffit, I have plenty of length, so if I make a mistake and I accidentally mess up the wire, I can cut it back and start over, and then I can take my length and then shove it up in the soffit after I'm done. It also makes it a lot easier when we get to a point when we're gonna wire the receiver. It's a lot easier for me to wire it here than on top of a ladder. I like to do as much on the ground as I can, because it makes it hard, the amount of tools you kind of have doing stuff like this on the top of a ladder. So now we're gonna go look at the next one. The reason why I started with that is because that was just a short, sweet path, and it's done, out of the way. So I think now I'm gonna go to my most challenging run, which is gonna be the longest run, which we're gonna come in somewhere on this side of the house to cover. And this channel is gonna cover this first peak and then that little bit of flat over that window to the left of the entry door there. And like I did over there, I'm gonna try and hide this receiver behind the rain gutter here. So now this is a different attic access to this, so I'm gonna go check the attic access out and make sure that I can get it exactly where I want. And then also it looks like I can use the same ladder over here. It's not too tall. So anytime I'm in a customer's house, treat it in a manner that I would want somebody else treating my house. So I'm about to go in an attic access now. I'm going to take off my booties, and I put this drop cloth here to not only keep tools and my booties on, but when I'm getting in and out of the attic, to help from spreading the mess all around the closets here. The house has blown insulation, so kind of pushing the insulation around, the blown insulation, so that I make sure to only step on the joists and not put a foot through the drywall. So let's walk. I see the corner of the front, and this looks like it has a similar build out to the other side of the house, where we've got the main peak running down the center of the house. From, say, looking at it from the front, it runs left to right of the house. So I see the similar access to what I had on the other side. I'm going to crawl in there and peek my head through. Make sure that I see the same thing I saw on the other side before I go to drill my hole and start to run my wire. And then looking at this one, I don't necessarily see daylight, but I do see a bathroom exhaust fan coming out there and venting to the area that I want to go. So I am pretty confident that when I drill a hole, I will be able to get up there. This spot, however, only looks like I got about a foot to work with. I don't have the 2 feet that I had on the other side of the house. So I can kind of see in there. Luckily, this allows me. Flashing kind of has a notch in it there. It looks like I'm okay to proceed. Kind of do the same thing I did on that side. There's obviously other ways you can do this. You could get a spool holder and put the spool on a holder so it rolls off the top. You can rig up a ladder with a pipe through it to hold the spool. In this case, I want to try and run the next 3 channels in one shot, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of pull some length off like this. Once again, I'm going to make sure I have the length spread out and unobstructed so that I can pull it without any snags. This also helps you untwist. The wire likes to stay kind of in a twist off of the spool, so it kind of, on a nice sunny day, the wire will kind of soften up a bit and it'll stay a little straighter. It won't be so coiled up. It'll be easier to pull. Yeah, so now that I have my hole, the nice thing about these rods is they are flexible, so you can, as you put them through the hole, you can kind of feel if you're hitting obstructions and kind of bend it out of the way and kind of arc it over. And then once again, now that I got my fish stick up there, I'm gonna go ahead and tape my wire to it. A little drizzly today, so hopefully my tape stick's okay. Once again, I do a little flag on the tape, and then we'll get that set. And then now that I'm going to try and reduce the amount of times I go up in the attic, being as though all my next 3 channels are all on the same side of the house, I'm going to try and do this with the next 3, and then make it to where I crawl into the farthest corner and I grab this wire and I pull it, and as I'm on my way back I grab the next one, and then so on until I get all 3 of them moved to where they got to go.
I'm going to pay for shipping.
So now we're at our third and final spot where we're going to put our receiver. I've already started. I've got fish sticks in the first 2 holes that have wire hanging out. This is going to be our third on this side of the house and our last one that have to drill and run a wire in. And then if everything goes as planned, hopefully I'll be able to go up in the attic and in one basically fluid motion, grab 1 wire and then move on to the next one and the next one, and then pull all 3 wires over to meet up with our other wire that we pulled earlier.
So one thing you'll notice as Brian is up on the roof doing the last wire run is that on the first 2 wire runs that we did on the left side of the house, the wire starting on the left side. On this side of the house, in both of these channels on the wire runs, the wire starting on the right side. You don't have to worry about that during install. You can pick the appropriate side for the wire for ease of installation, and our software in setup will take care of all the rest. So we really had 2 options to run the wire, and we chose for the one that went through the attic just because it was a much cleaner install. The other option would have been to run the wire through the channel itself and then run a channel on the outside of the house right up in the corner for the wire up the downspout and met where the downspout meets the soffit for the other option to run the wire to the second channel. So same thing on the other side. One way versus the other is just a little bit better hidden wire going through the attic. So really up to you on how you want to do it, but we chose hiding the wire as the better option for this installation.
Okay, it's very important to treat someone's house the way you'd want your house to be treated. So I always make sure I put my booties on, and I usually do them 1 leg at a time as I'm stepping into the house, so that at no point in time I'm stepping on the customer's floor in my dirty boots. It's very important when I come in an attic, especially an attic like this that has the blown insulation. It makes it very hard to tell where to step. So what I do, you can see the trusses that hold the roof up, and you can see where they come down and intersect here. There's usually going to be, because it's a truss, it's all one piece, there's a piece across the bottom. You want to make sure that when you're walking through an attic, you step on those trusses and do not accidentally slip. Make sure you have a sure foot, because it's easy to slip off, and when you slip off, it's usually a foot through drywall, or worse, you fall through the drywall. So a lot of times what I'll do is when I see where the truss is I know kind of where to step, and I'll put a foot down like this and kind of move the insulation back and forth, and make sure I'm sure-footed on a piece of wood down there. This also, by moving your foot back and forth, also not only helps you find a sure footing, but it also helps you find any plumbing pipes or anything that might be in the way that you definitely do not want to stand on, because you don't want to deal with busting a plumbing pipe. Because this house has multiple levels, especially on the roof line has multiple levels, there's 3 segments of attic basically. So I'm in the farthest segment of attic. I'm gonna grab my wire and I'm gonna move it over and push it up into the next segmented area of attic space. So, and then my preferred method of going through an attic is bringing a big flashlight such as this DeWalt with a hook, and I like to hook it onto stuff so that I can see where I'm going. A lot of other people like to buy the headlamps where you have the light right on your head. I've just never been a huge fan myself of that, but it works well for other people. It's always important to remember when in an attic, if you have to remove or move insulation to get a wire or get something where you need it, it's super important you take the time to put the insulation back, because otherwise the insulation is no longer doing its job. Now I'm getting ready to go to the next attic access. This is kind of the middle segment of the attic where I can retrieve the wire that I just fished up into this area. And while I'm up here, there should be 2 other wires. The 2 other wires I should be able to intercept. I'm gonna go ahead and grab those 2, and then we're gonna bring them over here, over this music room here. This is kind of the other end of the segment, and this is where I kind of have to get creative on. I gotta basically join 3 wires into one and then get them fed down into the lower segment of the attic over the garage there. When I went to go put the ladder for my attic access so that I can get up, I always make sure I put a drop cloth under my ladder. This not only protects the customer's carpet from any debris or anything that might be on the ladder, especially I like to, if you have a wood floor, the ladder could mark up their floor. So I always like to make sure I have a drop cloth under my ladders. It also catches some of the insulation and loose debris out of the attic. And it also gives me an area to pull my booties off without having to walk on the customer's flooring. I do not recommend wearing booties up in the attic because they can cause you to slip as you're going through, and they're going to pick up stuff that you don't necessarily want to track through the customer's house, making them kind of pointless at that part. So let's go ahead and see where our wires are. So if I did my job right, I should be able to walk over here and grab the fish stick that I just ran from the lower part of the attic. So at this point, I can not only grab my wire from below, but I should be able to find the next wire that I ran as well. At this point, I've got some wire for now. The fish stick is kind of in my way, so I'm going to pull the wire off the fish stick for now as I work to join it with the other wires. And once again, the reason why I left a large amount of cable outside in a straight line so it doesn't get hooked is so it doesn't bind up and cause me extra problems up here, because the less that I have to get in and out of the attic, the safer I feel I'll be, and it's a lot easier on your body as well. You might need to check the slack on that wire. The first one that we ran. So I have found the second wire. I'm going to pull it to the next wire, and I'm going to go ahead at this point. I'm going to unhook this from the fish stick as well, and I'm going to go ahead and tape these two together. The fact that they come from 2 different places, if by chance gravity were to take over and one of the wires were to shoot back and fall out, they should not make it all the way out the attic because they'll be tied together. I got all 3 of my wires to a point where they're all together. And the next area of attic that I need to get into has a hole here to crawl into the next area. So rather than that is your only access to that area, is that crawl hole. So rather than start to clog that up with a bunch of wires, I've come off it about 5 feet and I've drilled my own hole through that same plywood so that the wire stays away from the access hole. Again, you don't want to purposely or accidentally run something that's going to cause somebody else to trip on your wires. And then as I was collecting these, the tape got kind of large, so we're going to simplify that and make them a little smaller so that they feed down to the lower portion of the attic easier without as much resistance. And I like to, when I'm pulling a bunch of wires, I kind of like to stagger them in different lengths so that it doesn't get hit by a big clump at once. It kind of builds up to it. You get the first wire through, then the second, then the third, so on. Kind of makes things pull a little smoother. So for now, I'm just roughly taping them together. When I go to add them to a fish stick and push them down, I'm going to tape it up a little more refined. But this just kind of gets me through the wall where I need it to go. Again, I'm kind of using similar technique that I did outside. I'm pulling some slack in each spot so I don't have to rely on pulling the whole thing at once. It just makes it a little easier. So I will bring you through a quick journey of what I see through the hole.
Right here,
So
spin it around so you got
So right now, we're in that area above that music room, which is directly above the garage. The garage is 2 levels down. The garage is wider than this room. You can see how the roof pitches, and you can see how the joists come down. So right there where I have the flashlight pointed, you could see that the joists have a piece of cardboard holding the insulation back. That roof line will connect into the garage area. So we're going to go ahead and run our wires. We're going to tape them to a fish stick, and we're going to send the fish stick directly through that area so that we can intercept them down on our garage level. Next time I'll see you, it should be down in the garage area. Okay, so here we are, back where we started, in the garage. I'm gonna go up, and hopefully if everything went the way it was supposed to, I'm gonna see my wire hanging down in here, at least the fish stick. And it looks like it did what it was supposed to. So if you look here, I came up, that's that peak area that I showed you from above, and you can see our fish stick hanging out there. I'm gonna go ahead and grab it and pull my wire down. And hopefully I have enough slack up there that I don't have to go pull more. There we have it. All right, and we should have enough length because we were planning on going down this wall that's right below it anyway. My wires ran, we're gonna go ahead and put a receiver up. So I go to one of the areas where I ran my wires. I had put a loop with a zip tie just to ensure that I didn't accidentally pull it through, because then I'd be doing it all over again. Now that I got my wire out, I have my receiver. I'm gonna go ahead and take the lid off my receiver. And we'll place that to the side for now. The receiver is a 4-wire connection, and it's got Haven's easy connectors where you just pull the levers up, you strip your wire, you put them in the slots, and then you clamp the cable down. I'm gonna grab a knife and we'll strip our wire back. The Haven X Series wire consists of a 12 gauge 2 conductor, a red and black, it's the thicker of the 4 wires, and a 22 2 conductor shielded for the communication. Now I'm scoring the wire. I don't want to dig too deep with the razor knife because I don't want to nick the wire, because that could give it an area for corrosion to get into. So now I have my outer jacket out. There's a plastic coating over it that will you can kind of twist it to get that loose. And we'll pull that back, pull that pull string back, exposing the 2 12-2 wires. And then there's the shielded foil pack of the 22 gauge wires. It's a purple, a white wire, and it has a ground drain. Now on the receiver side, we do not hook up the ground drain. I'm going to go ahead and cut the ground drain out of it. I just want the 4 wires, but we want to make sure that we don't get rid of the ground drain when we hook up the controller side of the receiver. The ground drain is the wire that doesn't have a jacket on it. It's just a unjacketed silver wire that gives you a good ground. That's going to help protect it against rough weather or any other electrical interference. So now that I have them stripped, I'm going to take my receiver, I'm going to loosen up my strain relief connector that's on the receiver, and I'm going to feed my wires through. And again, this is why I left some length out of the eave, because it would be a lot more difficult if I had to do all this while it was mounted up here. So I like to go ahead and strip it back, leave it long, strip it back down here to where it's at a manageable spot for me to work on it. So now that I've gotten my jacket through the strain relief just a little bit, the white jacket, I'm gonna go ahead and tighten that so that it can't get pulled out, and it also helps keep everything weather tight. So once I'm through, I'm going to take my wires, I'm going to strip them. I'm going to cut the ends off in case I nick the ends when I strip the jacket off. And I'm going to strip them about 5/8 of an inch or so. Strip them back. Oops. On the two 12 gauge wires. Now what I like to do on the smaller gauge wires, because the connector, the Haven connector allows a pretty large gauge into it, so I like to strip the smaller gauge wires back just a little further, like an inch, inch and a half. After I do that, after I get them all stripped, I'll go ahead and twist my conductors to make sure that all the copper wires together and not frayed out. I'm going to go ahead and connect it in order. So from left to right, I have my 12 gauge red wire, which is going to go in the 24 volt positive connector. And I'm going to slip that, making sure that all of my copper goes in the right direction. I'm going to feed that into the connection all the way as far as I can go, and I'm going to lock down the orange connector on it. I'm going to repeat that for the black. And essentially I will do that with the 22 gauge wires, but this is where I get a little different because of the smaller gauge of the wire. The reason why we stripped them longer is I like to use my purple as my data negative. I have it stripped longer. I like to twist it, fold it back on itself, and then twist it again to give it just a little more thickness for the connector so that it ensures that I make a good connection. When doing the X series, if you get the X series completely hooked up and the lights turn on blue and they never turn off, it means it's not getting communication, and odds are that these two small wires are not seated well within the connector. So that's why I like to install them that direction, because I have yet to have a problem with the communication failing. So once I have those connected, insured, I kind of like to give the wires a little bit of a tug just to make sure that they seated right, that the clamp has them clamped. And then I'm going to go ahead and reinsert my cover. Oops. And this is where I can take my slack and push it up into the ceiling. And now I can figure out exactly how I want to mount it. And I think I'm going to do something like that to where it's behind the gutter. So now that I got that figured out, I'm going to grab a couple screws and my impact. When mounting anything outdoors, it's important to use an exterior rated screw. And these are just regular, like it's similar to a deck screw, but they are rated for exterior. They're a coated screw. So I ensured earlier that I had a pretty solid thing to screw to towards the house here. So I'm going to go ahead and mount that just like so. And you're not always going to get all 4 screws. If you can get all 4 screws, great. But in this instance, if I were to put the other 2 screws, they're just going to go into the thin soffit area and not most likely end up backing out and falling on the ground, and the customer is going to end up running them over and messing up his tires. So on to the next one. It helps me to have a little extra length in the box. It makes it easier for me to feed the wire into it. My next wire is my data negative, which we said we're using our purple for. And my last one is my data positive, which is our white wire. After I've got them in, I just kind of give them a good loop and make sure they sit down in there. Once again, you can give them a nice tug, make sure they're seated. And with that being done, all my wires are laid flat out of the way of my cover. I'll go ahead and install my cover. And then this is where it's nice having extra slack, because I was able to do all the parts that needed multiple tools down there where I was a little more comfortable. Now I just got to line this up and get a couple screws in it. On these higher ridges, because of the construction up here isn't brick, I feel it's easier to hide the look of the receiver by putting it up high on the wall here, as well as it gives me a nice solid mounting point to put all 4 screws in my receiver, and I just don't have to worry about that ever coming loose.